of anti-government protests in Burma. In London, a group of delegates met the Prime Minister, who pledged an extra £1 million in emergency aid and also promised to mobilise international pressure on Burma's military government.
In Britain, monks led a march to Downing Street this morning to meet the Prime Minister. Well, pro-democracy demonstrators are also marching to Trafalgar Square. Sky's Laura Bundock is there. Just how many people are really turning up for this, Laura?
We think there are about 3,000 people here at the moment. They're currently listening to a series of short speeches taking place behind me at the moment. The speeches are being made by members of a delegation which went to Downing Street to talk to Gordon Brown a little earlier on today. Now, there were several things they wanted to discuss with the Prime Minister. One of the main things was to ask him to really take the lead within the EU in terms of pushing for greater, for tougher sanctions against Burma. They say at the moment the sanctions in place aren't going far enough, and they want Gordon Brown to be pushing further than he is already. And now they came out to that meeting and said they were upbeat about how it had gone. They were pleased with the way the meeting had gone.
So it would seem, Laura, that the pressure is being mounted there by the Prime Minister. Is there a sense among the protesters there that that sort of pressure will now start to make a difference?
Well, that's very much what they're hoping. Like I said, the delegation, who are key figures, people who've really been campaigning for a long time about Burma, say they felt it had gone well. But it's now up to the Prime Minister to really try and take what was said in that meeting and try and make a difference. We understand that following the meeting, he has spoken to people within China, which will obviously be an encouraging step for many of the campaigners, certainly here, because China could hold the key here. In fact, China, as we know, has been a trading partner with Burma for a long time, has been supplying Burma with arms. One of the things many of the protesters here are saying that if Gordon Brown can really put pressure in terms of a global embargo on the dealing of arms with Burma, then that could make a big difference.
And what about the reaction in Burma itself? Things have been certainly quieter on the streets of Rangoon, and as we understand, across other parts of the country as well. Is there a sense or an understanding, perhaps, that it may be difficult to maintain pressure on the military junta whilst people are not venturing out onto the streets in the country itself?
I think that certainly is a fear. One of the problems some of the protesters are telling me here is that, yes, the UN sent an envoy in last week. Yes, he spent 4 days talking to the military leaders, but really, they say they've seen it all before. Nothing's changed. The envoy came back, he briefed the Security Council, he told them what he'd found. He wasn't happy with what he found, but they say they need the main man to get involved. They want the Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, to take personal involvement in this campaign now, to really keep this pressure on, so the momentum we've had in the past week or so is carries on, so that some difference can be made.
Laura Bundock, for now, thank you.
Central London in protest at the military repression in Burma. It's part of a global day of action against the country's military government. The Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, has vowed to keep up the pressure. Around 1,500 demonstrators have marched through central London to gather for a rally at Trafalgar Square. Mr. Brown said the regime must be sent a clear message that human rights abuses will not be tolerated.
We will try in every way that we can to mobilise the United Nations. I want the Security Council to oversee a process of reconciliation in Burma led by the Secretary General. I want the European Union to impose further sanctions on the regime to make it absolutely clear that we will not tolerate the abuses that have taken place. And I want all the other leaders of the world to work with us to achieve the progress that all of you here want to achieve in Burma, an end to abuse of human rights. We want the violence to stop against the people of Burma, and we want to move forward with the process of democracy and reconciliation as soon as possible. So I'm very pleased that you're all here with us today. I hope that your meeting and your demonstration is successful. And I think you know that you've got the support of the British government, and we'll do what we can. I have talked to all the major leaders, President Bush. I've talked to Premier Wen. I've also talked to the Secretary General of the United Nations recently, and I will continue to press there.
Today we are very encouraged with our delegation here to meet Prime Minister Gordon Brown, because it is so encouraging for us that Prime Minister Gordon Brown himself get engaged and personally push for further EU sanctions. And also he is also trying to get more support from the UN Security Council. And he is also willing to look into the humanitarian aid to Burmese people who are suffering for so long. So it is very good for us, and we had a really good time to meet with Prime Minister.
Irene, that was Soya Fan from the Burma campaign. Irene Khan, Secretary General of Amnesty.
The Prime Minister listened to us carefully. He said he would take on board the concerns we expressed for medical assistance to detainees and monks in Burma, to the call for sanctions and to the call for an arms embargo. The Prime Minister sees the path lying through the UN and has reassured us that the UK will continue to press for the UN Security Council to remain seized of the matter and to take a lead on the issue in Burma and to keep it on their agenda.
Okay. We are very big concern for our Buddhist man and the Buddhist nun and our people. Now is very much suffering in labor camp or forced labor to do, and also we need to support the British government or diplomatic British embassy to send aids, food and medicine to Buddhist man to support. Very difficult at the moment in Burma. Lay people, they can't send food into monastery for Buddhist monks. It's very, very difficult. So we requested the Prime Minister to help the British diplomat and the British embassy to lead and aid to Buddhist monastery is the labor camp.
In major cities across the world today, ordinary people are showing their support for the people of Burma, and that's what today's event in London is about. What the Prime Minister showed this morning was a real determination on the part of the British government to really act decisively, to build pressure for strong European Union, to build pressure for a stronger intervention by the United Nations, with the Secretary-General himself taking a leading role in really trying to get some movement from the regime in Burma. And I think we were all encouraged by the very strong personal commitment that he showed to that work.
And we really appreciate Prime Minister himself, but what we need to see is action.
I think that Gordon Brown showed remarkable commitment, understanding of the situation in Burma, and I feel absolutely confident that he will not lose interest and he will push and maintain the momentum that he is partly responsible for at this time. Certainly as far as the EU is concerned, it's clear that things often take a long time there, but there has been a speeding up of the process, and I'm hopeful that we will see strong measures on trade and investments against Burma. I do believe that that is absolutely key to how we deal with this most repressive regime, with the most suffering population, one of the most in the world, I believe, and I think Gordon Brown and the British government will be playing their part both in the UN and at the European Union level.
Yes, for me, it is very, very glad that Mr. Prime Minister showed his support for the suffering of the Burmese people. And he is closely watching what is happening in Burma. And also he is very committed for the cause for the democracy and human rights in Burma. And also he also promised to work on further and in the future as well, both regionally and internationally, and also the individually and the collectively. So he will keep on supporting our cause, and it made me very, very glad, and it gave me, hope for us. Thank you very much.